After 6 years caring for my paralyzed husband, I overheard him call me a free servant, so I did this. Before we get into it, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more true story dramas like this one. I met Leo when I was 30. He worked in tech sales and had a great smile. We fell in love fast and got married within a year. Everything felt good in the beginning. But one day, he had a terrible accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. He couldn't walk or move on his own anymore. His whole life changed. I didn't leave him. I stayed. I became his full-time caregiver. I helped him bathe, eat, use the bathroom, and get dressed. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, so I could be there for him day and night. I gave up job offers, outings with friends, and even my health just to take care of him. The nurses at the hospital would always tell me I was amazing. "You're so patient," they said. "He's lucky to have you." But Leo never said that. He never once thanked me. He just expected me to do everything without asking. I thought I was doing it for love, but I was slowly starting to feel like a ghost. Then came the moment that broke me. One day at the hospital, Leo was in his room, and I stepped into the hallway. I was about to go back in when I heard his voice. He was on the phone with someone, and I stopped to listen. He said, "I don't need to hire anyone. I've got a free live-in nurse. She does everything, and when I'm gone, everything goes to Ethan." My heart dropped. That free nurse was me. And Ethan, his brother, was someone who had never even helped or visited. I felt cold. My hands were shaking. After 6 years of giving my life to him, that's how he saw me? Just some free help? I walked back in and said nothing. I handed him his water. He didn't notice anything was wrong. But something inside me had changed. I didn't feel sad. I felt empty. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. The man I gave everything to didn't value me. I had wasted years trying to be a good wife, while he was planning to leave me with nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I started planning. Quietly. I looked for editing jobs. I started saving money. I called my friend Zoe and told her everything. She told me the truth I didn't want to hear. "You're not his wife anymore. You're his worker." And she was right. We stepped back into the loft, and I felt it immediately, like I had been dropped into someone else's life again. Liam's life. It was the same apartment from before we were married. Same layout, same furniture, even the smell of old wood and dust. Nothing about it ever became ours. It had always been his. When I first moved in years ago, it was with 2 small suitcases. My desk, my books, even the framed photos I brought stayed boxed in a corner for weeks. He told me not to hang anything up without checking first. I remember standing in the living room one evening, holding a framed photo of us smiling, unsure where it could go. "Let's not clutter the place," he said. So I put it away. In the early days, I used to try. I'd cook dinner, make little changes to the place, light candles in the evening. I thought it would slowly become home. But it never did. Liam had opinions about everything, and most of them were quiet but firm. "No need to cook," he once said, pushing away a plate I made with care. "Noah likes takeout when he's here." Just like that, my effort was dismissed. Noah had always been in and out of the loft. He treated it like his second home. When he walked in after Liam came back from the hospital, it was as if nothing had changed. He dropped his bag by the door and flopped onto the couch without a word. He didn't ask how Liam was doing. He didn't look at me. He just grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. I placed dinner on the table, simple, healthy, and warm. He looked at it, then at me. "Still trying with this stuff?" he said, loud enough for me to hear but soft enough to pretend it was a joke. "You know Liam's not into all that." I sat down but didn't eat. I watched them, brothers who had lived together for years, who had their way of doing things. I was always the outsider, just someone who happened to exist between them. Later that week, Liam had a visitor, a former coworker he hadn't seen in a while. I stood behind him as he sat in his wheelchair, waiting for him to introduce me. He smiled and said, "This is Maya. She helps out here." That was it. Not my wife, not my partner, just someone who helps. That night, Noah asked me to iron his shirt. When I didn't respond immediately, he waved his hand and said, "Whatever. Not like this is your place anyway." That line stayed with me. Not your place. He was right. It never was. And in that moment, I finally stopped trying to pretend it ever could be. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But something inside me broke loose, quiet and certain. I was done being invisible in a life I had poured myself into. I was finished being a guest in my own marriage. The next steps weren't clear yet, but for the first time in years, I was ready to imagine something different, something mine. The day Liam came home from the hospital was nothing like I imagined. I thought there might be relief, maybe a quiet moment of peace. Instead, the air felt thick, like the walls of our house were pushing in. I helped him out of the car, guided his wheelchair up the ramp, and opened the front door. He didn't say thank you. He barely looked at me. Inside, everything looked the same. but it didn't feel like home. The plants I once cared for had wilted. The light from the windows seemed colder than before. I wheeled Liam into the living room. He asked for the remote, then the blanket, then complained the room was too hot. I adjusted the thermostat without a word. There was no welcome back, no warmth. Just tasks, instructions, demands. I fell into routine quickly, like muscle memory. Meals, meds, repositioning, laundry, managing his medical supplies. My own thoughts came second, sometimes not at all. The quiet between us grew heavier with each passing day. Liam didn't ask how I was managing. He never did. One afternoon, while sorting through papers in the home office, I came across a folder left open on the desk. I recognized it. It was the one his lawyer had sent over a year ago. I meant to file it, thinking it was just more paperwork about his medical care or finance, but something stopped me. I flipped through the pages and found the life insurance policy. I stared at the names under beneficiary. Noah. Elena. I read them twice. Then a third time. My name wasn't there. Elena had died before Liam and I even got married. She was the ex he rarely spoke about. The one he said was part of the past. Yet here she was, still written into the future. And Noah, who had never lifted a finger to help with Liam's care, was the main beneficiary. I wasn't even a footnote. I sat down slowly, still holding the paper. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. It was worse than that. I felt nothing at all. Just a deep, cold silence inside me. How long had I been invisible to him? I thought of the hours, days, years I had poured into caring for him. All the nights I stayed awake watching him breathe. The mornings I dragged myself out of bed to help him with the most basic tasks. And this was what I meant to him. Nothing. I didn't bring it up to him. What was the point? If he hadn't thought to include me by now, he never would. I still made his dinner. Still helped him into bed. Still washed the dishes and folded his clothes. But something had changed. That night, I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, listening to the sound of the TV playing softly. Liam laughed at something. I couldn't remember the last time he laughed with. Maybe he never had. I went into the guest room and closed the door behind me. For the first time in 6 years, I slept alone by choice. And I didn't miss him. The chill between us was no longer just emotional. It was real. And it was growing. Dinner was simple that evening. Nothing fancy. Just rice, vegetables, and grilled chicken. I plated it and placed it in front of Liam. He barely glanced at it before sighing loudly. Again with this healthy stuff? He muttered, pushing the plate a few inches away. You know I like real food. I sat across from him in silence. Normally, I would have jumped to fix it, offered something else, apologized, tried to make it better. But not tonight. I made what we had, I said calmly. You can eat it or not. He looked up at me, surprised. What's with the attitude? No attitude, I replied, still steady. I just don't feel like wasting food or energy tonight. He stared at me for a few seconds, his eyes narrowing. You've been different lately. Cold. Distant. I didn't answer. I just picked up my own fork and began eating, slowly, quietly, while his untouched plate sat between us. The room was silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't return it. After dinner, I went through the motions like I always did. Cleaning, checking his meds, folding laundry. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. I thought about everything I had been doing, all the years I had spent putting his needs above my own. And for what? I wasn't his partner. I wasn't even his future. I was just the person who kept things going so he could stay comfortable. That night, when Liam went to bed early complaining of a headache, I stayed in the living room. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. My finger hovered over one name for a long time, Zoe. We hadn't talked in months. Life had gotten busy, and I stopped calling, but I knew she'd answer. And she did. Maya. Her voice was warm, surprised. Is everything okay? No, I said, holding back tears. But I think I'm finally ready to talk. Within an hour, I had thrown a few clothes into a tote bag. I didn't pack much. Just enough to get away. I left a note on the counter. I'll be gone for a few days. I need space. Please don't call. I slipped out the door and took a ride to Zoe's place, a little studio tucked behind her flower shop. She greeted me in pajamas, arms wide open, no question. Inside, it smelled like lavender and fresh clay. Her space was small but full of life. Art, plants, books. A place that felt real and lived in, unlike the coldness I had left behind. We sat on the floor, cross-legged, sipping tea. I told her everything. The years of quiet giving. The life insurance paper. The dinner that felt like a final line had been crossed. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when I was done, she looked at me and said, Maya, you're not a wife to him. You're unpaid labor. That's what you've become. The words hit hard because they were true. I had avoided naming it, but she said it plainly. I wasn't being loved. I was being used. I spent the night on her pull-out couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. For the first time in years, I felt a little less heavy. Not free, not healed. But like I had taken the first breath after holding it in for far too long. Sandra was already asleep when I tiptoed into Zoe's tiny apartment that night. Her little body curled up on the sofa, arms wrapped around the stuffed bunny she never let go of. I stood there for a while, just watching her breathe. The day had been long and messy, but her peaceful face made it all feel worth it. Zoe walked in from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron. "She's safe here," she whispered. I nodded but couldn't speak. My throat was tight. The quiet had a way of dragging out all the feelings I'd buried. Anger, hurt, shame. The next morning, Sandra sat on the floor with her crayons, humming as she drew a pink sun and blue grass. I sat across from her, pretending to be okay. But I wasn't okay. Zoe placed a plate of toast in front of me. "Eat. You haven't had a real meal in days." I tried, but every bite felt heavy. "Zoe, what am I doing?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "I left him. I took Sandra. And now I'm sitting on your floor like I'm running from the law." "You didn't run," she said. "You survived. That's different. But what now?" I stared at my daughter. She deserves stability. A home. Not this. Zoe leaned against the table. "She needs you. And you need a life where you're not being drained every day." I looked down. I don't know who I am anymore. Zoe left the room and came back with an old photo. "You gave me this years ago. Remember this?" It was me. Hair loose, arms wide, standing in front of a local event where I had run the social media campaign. I looked alive. I looked happy. "You're still her," Zoe said. "She's buried under 6 years of exhaustion, but she's in there." Sandra crawled into my lap just then, holding her drawing. "Look, Mommy, it's you and me. And a flower shop." I laughed, but my eyes stung. "It's beautiful, baby." She tilted her head. "Are you sad?" I pulled her close. "A little, but not because of you. You make everything better." Sandra reached up and touched my cheek. "Then don't be sad, okay? We can stay with Miss Zoe and be happy." That moment cracked something in me. This little girl didn't care about the fancy house I left behind. She didn't ask about Liam or why we had packed in such a rush. All she wanted was love, safety, and her mom's smile. I didn't need to have every answer yet. I didn't need to rebuild my whole life overnight. But I could start small. I could start by showing Sandra that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they once mattered. Later that evening, while Sandra napped, I opened my laptop and began typing. Nothing major. Just thoughts. Feelings. Pieces of myself I'd ignored for years. And when I hit save, I realized something. I wasn't just running away anymore. I was choosing something new. Something better. For me and for Sandra. Each morning, Sandra woke up before me, full of life and questions, her small voice calling, "Mommy, look at this flower," or "Can we go outside today?" was the only thing that kept me moving some days. She didn't understand the storm I was walking through, but she was my anchor in it. We had found comfort in Zoe's little shop home. It wasn't much, one bedroom above racks of potted herbs and handmade mugs, but it felt more like home than Liam's place ever did. The air smelled of fresh clay and rosemary, and at night, Zoe would light vanilla candles while Sandra drifted to sleep beside me on the pull-out couch. One night, after Sandra fell asleep, I sat by the window, holding an old camera I found in Zoe's storage. It brought back memories I hadn't touched in years. Before Liam, before caregiving, I used to photograph city life. Faces, shadows, rain-soaked sidewalk. I used to love it. I turned it over in my hands, remembering how it felt to create something just for me. Then, quietly, I opened my notebook and started writing, little things at first. Lines about Sandra's laughter. A description of how lavender curled near the window. It was small, but it was mine. Zoe noticed the change in me. "You look different," she said one afternoon. "Like someone who's beginning to breathe again." I smiled. I think I forgot how. Later that week, I was folding Sandra's tiny shirts when a thought hit me. I'd given so much to Liam, for free. No recognition, no safety net, not even a thank you. Just years of invisible work. That night, after Sandra fell asleep, I started searching online. Simple questions like, what rights does a caregiving spouse have? And is unpaid care considered contribution in marriage? I didn't expect answers, but I found them. The more I read, the more I realized I wasn't powerless. I'd supported Liam physically, emotionally, financially, and the law didn't ignore that. I learned about spousal rights, asset division, even caregiver compensation in some divorce cases. For the first time in a long while, I felt something light up in me. Not rage, just clarity. The next morning, while Sandra colored at the table, I looked for freelance work. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I found a small remote editing job, something I could do while she napped. I applied without overthinking it. When I got an interview request the next day, I nearly cried. Not because it was some dream job, but because someone wanted me for something beyond wiping spills and pushing wheelchairs. I told Zoe, and she squeezed my hand. "You're coming back to life." I didn't say it, but she was right. Each day after that, I added a little more to the pile. I organized old receipts, emails from Liam, doctor's schedules I used to manage. I made a quiet file, a record of my worth. Not to prove to him, but to prove to myself. Sandra ran up one afternoon with a clay turtle Zoe helped her make. "This is you," she said, placing it in my hand. "Because turtles carry their homes and they don't give up." I hugged her tight. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was walking towards something, with my little girl beside me. I spent days preparing for it in my mind, replaying every insult, every moment of being ignored, every meal I cooked that was left untouched. But nothing could fully brace me for the chill that hung in the air that evening. I knew Noah and his new girlfriend were coming over. Liam expected me to cook something special, as usual. I didn't. Instead, I boiled pasta, no sauce, barely salted. I served it without apology. Noah took one look at the plate and scoffed. "Is this what you're feeding him now?" he said, nudging his girlfriend, who laughed under her breath. "No wonder he looks worse every time I visit." I sat down without saying a word. Liam didn't defend me. He never did. Noah leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. "I mean, what's she even doing here, anyway?" He turned toward Liam. "She's not even in the will. Everything's still going to me, like we talked about." "Right." Liam didn't say a word. The silence broke something open in me. Not rage, clarity. I looked around the room. The kitchen I had cleaned every day. The man I had lifted, fed, bathed. The brother who never once thanked me. I stood up. Calm. Steady. "I used to think this was love," I said, my voice even. "That taking care of someone through their worst days meant something. That it would be seen. Respected." They both stared at me like I'd grown another head. "I believed he was worth it," I said, motioning to Liam. "I believed he would have done the same for me." Noah rolled his eyes. "So what? You want a medal for sticking around? You weren't even married long. You didn't build anything. You just helped out." I turned to him. "You don't understand loyalty because you've never given it, and you wouldn't know decency if it hit you in the face." His girlfriend snorted. "Drama queen." I looked at Liam. He still said nothing. That was the moment I knew it was over, not just emotionally, but in every real way. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I said. "The paperwork is done. I'm filing for divorce." That finally got a reaction. Liam's eyes widened, his mouth opened like he was about to argue, but nothing came out. "I'm not staying here another day," I continued, "and I'm not walking away empty-handed. You don't get to erase me from your life like I never mattered." I walked to the door, pulled out the sealed envelope from my bag, and taped it right to the front. The letter from my lawyer. Clear, formal, unmistakable. Noah scoffed again. "You're bluffing." I turned around slowly. "Try me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I picked up my coat, grabbed Sandra's backpack from the hallway, and walked out. No one followed. Out in the quiet of the street, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not all at once. But something shifted. This wasn't the end. It was the start of something I should have done long ago. Not just leaving a man who used me, but finally choosing me. I didn't pack much. Just a few clothes, my laptop, and Sandra's favorite blanket. Everything else felt like it belonged to another life, one I wasn't taking with. Zoe arrived right on time, her car already running, trunk popped open. Liam sat in his wheelchair near the window watching. He didn't say anything. No apology. No goodbye. Just that same smug look, like he thought I'd be back within a week. I stood by the door for a second, then turned. "Next time you need a caregiver, try offering a salary," I said calmly. He blinked. That was it. No reaction. Sandra held my hand tightly as we walked down the steps and into Zoe's car. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. Somehow, at only 6 years old, she understood more than most adults. Zoe's apartment was small but warm, tucked above her flower shop. The hallway smelled like lavender and fresh soil. Inside, the living room was filled with sunlight and handmade pottery. Sandra walked straight to the couch and curled up under her blanket. I stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do with the quiet. Zoe opened a cupboard and pulled out 2 plates. "You need to eat," she said, setting down a bowl of rice and steamed vegetable. It was the first meal I'd eaten sitting down in months. The silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. The food tasted like freedom. That night, I lay in bed listening to the hum of the city outside. No demands, no footsteps, no one asking where the remote was or complaining about dinner. Just the soft sound of Sandra breathing beside me. The next morning, I opened my laptop, logged into my remote editing job, and found a new email from my supervisor. Praise. My revisions had helped tighten the story without losing its emotional core. She said I had a natural instinct for storytelling. I smiled. I hadn't smiled like that in so long. It felt unfamiliar. Then came the messages. First from Liam. One word. Why? Then longer ones. We could have fixed this. You overreacted. Come back. Be reasonable. I didn't respond. Noah's messages were worse. Angry, insulting. accusing me of being a gold digger, a homewrecker. I blocked both of them. Zoe handed me a small bouquet the next day, roses and wildflowers. For the living room, she said. New beginnings need color. Sandra helped me put them in a vase. Then she drew a picture, me, her, and Zoe standing in front of a big sun. She wrote one word across the top in messy handwriting, happy. I stuck it on the fridge. The days became gentler. I woke up early, edited quietly with coffee in hand, made breakfast with Sandra, and helped Zoe water the plants downstairs. We laughed a little more each day. There was still a court case coming, still paperwork and lawyers and hard things ahead. But for the first time in 6 years, I was living, not surviving. I didn't miss the house. I didn't miss Liam. I didn't miss being invisible. I was building something new. And it was mine. The day I walked into Karen's office, I was nervous but ready. The walls were lined with books and her desk was stacked with case files, but she greeted me with a calm, reassuring smile. Sandra sat beside me, legs swinging under the chair, drawing quietly while I explained everything. Karen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You've done more than your share. Legally, emotionally, financially, you're entitled to much more than they led you to believe." Her words settled like warm tea in my chest. She laid out the plan, how we'd file, what evidence to gather, and how to document the years I gave. Not just as a wife, but as a caregiver. Filing the papers wasn't emotional. It was practical, necessary, and overdue. A few days later, my phone rang. Liam. I let it go to voicemail. His message was frantic, his tone different now, more desperate than angry. Are you really going to turn a family matter into a public mess? We can still fix this. Fix what exactly? I didn't call back. Noah didn't wait for the court. He stormed into Zoe's shop 2 days later, loud and aggressive. You think you're going to take everything? That apartment isn't yours. That money, none of it. Zoe stepped between us before I could say anything. You're trespassing. Take one more step, and I'm calling the police. He left, cursing under his breath, knocking over a vase on his way out. Zoe didn't flinch. She just cleaned it up like it meant nothing. Court day came faster than expected. I wore simple clothes and brought every document Karen told me to. Liam was already there, looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence. He didn't look at me. The proceedings were dry, financial records, statements, timeline. Then came the surprise, hidden asset transfers. Karen uncovered them during discovery. Accounts moved quietly into Noah's name, attempts to shield Liam's savings from the divorce. The judge wasn't impressed. Karen was calm and sharp, speaking clearly about my years of unpaid caregiving, the emotional labor, the financial dependence I endured, and the clear efforts to deceive the court. When the ruling came down, I didn't smile. I was awarded my share of marital assets and spousal support. Fair, but not generous. Just enough to start over, not to feel victorious. Outside the courthouse, I stood on the steps with Sandra holding my hand. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt drained. Zoe met us there with a small thermos of tea and a silent hug. We didn't talk much on the ride home. The win wasn't about money. It wasn't about punishing Liam or proving anything to Noah. It was about reclaiming what I lost quietly over time, respect, voice, worth. Back at the apartment, Sandra drew another picture. This time, it was just 2 people, her and me, standing on grass with a blue sky above. She looked up and asked, "Are we done with the bad part now?" I nodded slowly. Almost. Because healing doesn't happen all at once. It comes in small pieces, cups of tea, drawings on the fridge, quiet nights in a safe place. The battle was over. The peace had just begun. The apartment above Zoe's flower shop smelled faintly of lavender and fresh bread. It was small, with creaky floors and mismatched furniture, but it was mine now. The first space I'd lived in that felt like home, not because it was perfect, but because I finally felt free in it. Sandra had just returned from preschool, clutching a little box she decorated with glitter and crayon. "Surprise, Mommy," she giggled, opening it to reveal a few uneven brownies. "I made these for you and Annie Zoe. They're special because they make people feel better." I bent down and kissed her forehead. "They already did, sweetheart." Zoe came in behind her, wiping her hands on a towel. "We're closing early today," she said, smiling. "Let's do something peaceful for once." We spent the afternoon arranging flowers, something I'd never thought I'd enjoy. But it was calming, choosing colors, trimming stems, breathing in nature's quiet beauty. Sandra hummed to herself as she handed us small vases, proud to be helping. She named each bouquet with the seriousness of a little girl on a mission. "This one's hope," she said. "This one is soft lemon. And this one," she held up a simple pink and white rose cluster. "This one is gratitude." That one stayed with me. Later, while Zoe and Sandra watered the plants, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital. Liam had been admitted, something with his blood pressure. The nurse said he'd asked for me. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel pity. I felt calm. Then Noah called. His voice was sharp, accusing. You happy now? He's in the hospital, and you're playing house upstairs with flowers. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, you're his family. Take care of him. And I hung up. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I had given everything I had. And now I chose myself. The sun dipped low in the sky as we stepped out onto the small balcony. Sandra held the bouquet she called gratitude and placed it on the table gently, as if it were something sacred. Zoe poured us each a cup of tea, and for a while, none of us spoke. The world outside buzzed with traffic and people, but up here, it was still. Safe. Sandra leaned against me, yawning, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Are we staying here forever, Mommy? She whispered. I looked down at her and smiled. We're staying somewhere full of love. That's what matters. Zoe nodded in quiet agreement. As night fell, and the stars began to blink into the sky, I felt it. Not victory, not triumph. Just peace. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was simply living. If your husband was paralyzed and you'd spent years caring for him, could you still walk away after everything, like I did? Some people say I should have stayed. Others say I waited too long to leave. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if real-life stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss what's next.